Ladies and gentlemen, we have finally done it. For the first time in my Yu-Gi-Oh career, I won a tournament. It was a box tournament, and by the literal skin of my teeth, I went undefeated, and Despia is what finally pushed it over the edge for me to be able to do this. Now, it was a side event at a case tournament, so, none of the heavy hitters were there, and I lost out of the case tournament. But semantics. A win is a win. Undefeated is undefeated. We take those. Anyway, I'm just going to get into what I played for that, because a lot of my choices were mostly standard. I'm just going to show you what I ran, and I guess what I would change if I ever got to that. So, I'll just jump right in. A lot of this is standard from the previous list that I did, so I'll just try and go quickly with it. 3 Aliber, 3 Tragedy, and the 1 ad libitum for the Despia names. I've explained all these before. They're pretty self-explanatory. Ran 2 Albaz. Like I said last time, you can run 3 if you want. I just felt 2 was correct. The 1 Albion, and then the 1 Mercurier and Kit for that little engine. I played around with this, same as I said in my last video. You can do 1, 2, or 3 of this. It just depends on how heavily you want to lean into this. Same with Mercurier. There were a few other lists at both tournaments that day, actually, that were running multiple Mercurier because they were leaning heavily into the banish it off of a lore package. I would consider that more, honestly, because it worked pretty well for them. But I mean, I was happy with it. When it worked, it worked. When it didn't, some situations I missed it, but others I just relied on the rest of my board. And then Kit is just Kit. Fairy Tale Snow, this actually came in really handy. There's a lot of times where I just go the standard send Albaz and Tragedy, go into Libellion first without even needing Snow. But when I needed Snow was really clutch. I faced a couple in the case tournament. I had a couple Sword Soul matchups, and that was really handy to threaten their board to stop them from synchroing off. So Snow I would keep just because it's a really good light target. If you want to do a different one, you can run Incredible Ecclesia. I really considered running Ecclesia instead, but just for other matchups, I mean, Fairy Tale, you've heard my opinions on Fairy Tale Snow. It's stupid and it should be banned again. So, why not take advantage of it while it's still legal? And then the Edge Imps for the Frifer package, that's also pretty standard. I think that's pretty much no change from the last deck profile I did. So most of my thoughts on those are in the previous video if you want to go back and revisit those. Spells, as soon as I get these organized and out the way and stop shaking my camera. Spells should mostly be the same as well. 3 Branded Fusion, no explanation needed. Same thing with Branded Opening. 2 Branded in Red, which is what I ran last time in my previous list. I still like that. Maybe some situations where 3 would have been handy, but honestly, I like 2 way better. The 1 Branded Loss, because it's crazy. And Theater, having a searchable poly actually really came in handy. I really liked doing that. 3 Patchwork for the Frifer engine. I give my thoughts on the ratios in the Frifer engine in the previous video. But long story short, you can kind of play around with the ratios of this. You can go 2 of this, 2 Edge Imp if you want. It's really up to you. I liked this at 3 because I saw the engine more often than not. 2 poly for it. 1's not enough. 3's too many. No more explanation needed. Super Poly is a main deck 3 of. It was insane. When I saw it, I usually won because it was crazy, especially if it's a mirror. And if you don't need it, side it out. I ended up siding this out in a couple matchups that I didn't need. 3 Allure, because this is a more Allure heavy build. A new change that I decided to go with, 3 Droplet in the main. I am so glad I did this because this saved my ass more times than I can count. Droplet, unsurprisingly, is a very good card. Go figure. It's just so free. Activate another spell, use Droplet, turn off the board. I think one of my last matches in the second tournament, the final match I played was against Sword Soul. I had to play into kind of an annoying board presence. I drew Droplet, and it's Droplet. It worked. Call by is too broken not to play. 1 Cosmic in the main as last time for the Mystic Mine out. I didn't actually come up against this, thankfully, but just having it to know that I have outs to some things like that. In the case tournament, I ended up against it was like a zombie Eldritch branded fusion hybrid thing. I ended up in a lock with Rivalry of Warlords and Zombie World on the field, and I had the main deck out for it, so just knowing that I had that let me keep playing that game, but my opponent just out-resourced me in that. You're usually not worried about that, but if it happens, it happens. But having a main deck out to something like that is usually nice. And Branded Sword, standard in a lot of lists. Branded Banishment in the main deck. I did this last time, and I did this for the Case Tournament and Side Tournament. I would honestly just consider side decking this. It's really good into the Mirror and into Sword Soul, but I mean, there were just a couple times where I drew it where it was just dead, and it was just in my deck taking up space, and I just figured I'd put it in the side deck, and if I ever need to use it, then I'll do that. So that is... Banishment in the main is potentially something I would change. It's still okay in the main because, I mean, go figure, Despia and Sword Soul are really popular matchups right now. There were some instances where I saw it or where I just had it in the deck where I could go into it and it just put in work, but overall I think I would just side it. That's really up to you, but after everything that I did in the tournament and what I saw, I would probably just side it now. That is the main deck. I believe that it's still 44 cards, something like that. It's still up there. Side deck. I did 2 DD Crow. Even in matchups that this came up in, it never came up. I never sided it in. So I would honestly change this out for something else if I were to do that. 2 Kaijus. I was afraid of like big unaffected stuff, which funny enough, an Ignister player won the entire Case tournament. So my fears were a little bit justified because this deck has no out to something like an Arrival Cyberse. I never had to play against that, but if I did, I had the Kaijus in the side if I ever needed to do that. I kind of like this. If you don't need it, you can pitch it off of a lore. You can always use it as fusion material for something like Guardian Chimera. I do kind of like that. I would honestly up this to 3. I would cut the 2 DD Crows, and I would side the Branded Banishment and then put in a 3rd Kaiju probably because it's just so good for helping you to get rid of boards. I did the Necroworld Banshee and the Zombie World. I think I put this in maybe once, but it just didn't come up in that situation. But I mean, having this is pretty standard, and it just shuts down decks that can't play around that, so it's really good. Change of Heart. I put this in a couple matchups. I didn't see it, but if I would have seen it, it pretty much would have broken the board single-handedly. This card is ridiculous. It's stupid. It should not be unbanned because it's so great. But it's a one-of, so unfortunately, I did not see it in any matchup that I put it in. 2 Cosmic and 2 Twin Twister. This deck can't play under anti-spell. You hope to get around that. Going second, 3 Evenly Matched, and the 1 Red Reboot. Even if I'm not up against a trap deck, I always side this in because D-Barrier is a hell of a card, and I cannot play under that. So you hope you see this for the D-Barrier, because go figure, D-Barrier, the Despia player, and they cannot play the game. Happened to me way too many times for me to count, so you can imagine how that went. That's the side. Extra deck should be mostly the same. I think there's only 1 change from the previous video, so I'll do that really quickly. 2 Mirror Jade. I did end up playing the 2 Lubellion. I know at one point I had only 1 Lubellion in the extra deck. I don't think there was ever a situation where I needed the second one, so honestly, playing 1 isn't necessarily bad. I was kind of correct in that video. But just having the second one to be able to go into for the grind game, honestly, just having that security and having the knowledge that you can do all your plays again if it gets stopped is just, I think that's worth it. So like 2 Lubellion, I can see 1. I would maybe experiment with playing 1 again, but just having the security of 2 of them is just too good not to do. So I would probably just do 2 from now on. 2 Albion. This is mostly standard. You can run 3 if you want, but you don't really need to run 3 when you also have the Alba Lenitus. If you don't ever make this, you can send this off of Mirror Jade effect, and it searches a polymerization or fusion spell. So, I mean, this, majority of the time, you're sending Albion on turn 2 or 3 to search out a branded fusion for next turn. This does the exact same thing. If you're in a matchup where this doesn't come up, You can send this, search Brand Infusion, and this also just lets you play the game again, because you can fuse into this. I mean, the materials are Albaz and then one or more dragons. So if you're in the grind match, you can go into one of these and then literally shuffle all 4 of these back to summon this, and then you can just do it all again. That never came up for me, but just being able to essentially reset your entire extra deck is just insane. There's the possibility that you can do that. One Quertus, standard. You know, there were situations where it came up. 2 Masquerade. There were a couple instances where this card is just a hidden MVP. Just making your opponent answer that before they attempt to do anything else. It's just so good. It does the burn. It comes back as a body. The card is just insane. Proskinian, really good super poly target for when it comes up, and you know, it can answer stuff in the grave. I had this come up in who was it? There was a like an ABC Brave Therian deck that I had to play against. I ended up going into this off of a super poly, I believe, and then I like reborn the ABC Buster. And that essentially made them had to play around more. I think they had to like link it off with Underworld Goddess just to answer their own ABC. So you know, this comes up. You steal important stuff out the grave. Stealing ABC out the grave was really funny because like he had to answer that immediately, or just his board's in trouble. So that's honestly probably the flex spot of the extra deck, and I guess you can throw Brigand in there as well. I don't know if I ever sent this. I wanted to send stuff like Albion or Albalanitis to search out the fusions. But Brigand comes up because you can fuse into it, and it can be a little added layer of protection for your stuff. You can send it if you want, but really all that does is either add or summon Albaz or Mercurier from your deck, which it can be nice, like going into an Albaz in the end phase to just fuse off the board even more. Just add Mercurier to your hand for negation next turn. I don't think I ever did that, but just having that option available to me if I ever got into that state of the board, it's really good. So I would honestly probably keep that. You can argue that that's a flex spot as well as Proskinian, so what you do with that is really up to you, and I would say everything else is pretty much mostly standard at this point, including 2 Guardian Chimera. This is pretty much non-optional. You got to play 2 of that. And the 1 Dragus Despia, that's also kind of, you know, not really optional. It's another one of your negates. It's Dragus Despia. There's not really much more to say about that. That is the deck. I think I went over every change that I would make, and yeah, other than that, I just played best I could, and yeah, that's how it went. I guess matchup spread, I can go over that just to show what it was like. It was only a 4-rounder, which was really funny, a 4-round tournament for a box, but I don't care. We take those. A win is a win, and it was my box. Match 1 was against Fluffle branded. It was basically a Fluffle deck with the new branded stuff. It had he was playing Branded Fusion, the Mirror Jade and the Albion and all those. It was more so Fluffle centered, so it was quote unquote a mirror match, but the core of the deck was Fluffle, not Despia, so it leaned more heavily into that. Match 2 was against Virtual World. Basically what that boiled down to is the Virtual World player just, I think they bricked because like their boards weren't the standard Virtual World board. A lot of the time it was just Shen pass, and then I just outgassed them is what my assumption was. What was really funny is they summoned DPE on me. For some reason they were playing DPE in the main deck, and they saw the 2 Fusion Destiny. So having to deal with that was kind of funny, but I mean, it was also really easy because, you know, Super Poly Go Burr, which was really funny. Match 3 was against, I think it was just like a Trap Trick deck with a Dogmatica engine. So, you know, Trap Dot deck. That was honestly the toughest one to do because getting into a grind game with a Trap deck can be really, really funny. Long story short, game 1 got anti-spelled and they had a board. Sucks, feels bad. Game 2, sideboard comes into play. I saw back row hate. Game 3, D barrier is a hell of a card, so you got to wait till more turns to be able to get into that. And then I was just finally able to get into more of my engine and win. And honestly, I kind of scraped that one off the skin of my teeth because go figure, trap deck annoying, and you gotta outgrind it. And then match 4 for the match for the box, I played against a Sword Soul player, so it was pretty much just Branded versus Sword Soul at that point. I won the die roll, which is really, really handy, and just my condolences to that guy for game 1, because my hand was, I can't remember exactly what was in my hand, but it was broken. Like, I opened every starter / extender that I could ask for. The only interaction they had was a Ghost Bell, which I couldn't get to Branded Lost, so Bell actually would have come up, but I had Called by the Grave in my hand, so, just get good, am I right? Game 2, I think they just built enough of a board to where I couldn't get to it. They weren't playing D-Barrier, I think they were playing Rivalry, which, fun fact, this deck also does not like. But just, they built the board, I didn't have enough gas to break it, and in game 3, just pretty much the same thing. I built my board, I had enough interactions to stop theirs, and then just Branded Gober. And yeah, my first undefeated win. I don't care if it was a 4-rounder and a side event in the case tournament, so none of the other players were in it. Shut up, I won. It's, yeah, we take those. But yeah, I could not be more thrilled about that. It was fun to do, and I can finally say that I have a tournament under my belt, regardless of the circumstances. So, yeah, that's what I played. That's what I would change. I think I went over every major change that I would make in the deck. And I think that's about all I got for that. Thanks for tuning in, and have a good rest of the day.